The Shattered Accord. The great Accord Hall was silent, its marble floor reflecting the banners of dozens of alien civilizations, banners that once promised peace, unity, and trust. At the center of the hall stood the human envoy, a tall figure in a black coat, his face calm but his eyes sharp. He had traveled across the stars carrying the weight of Earth's voice. His mission was simple: protect the Accord, the fragile peace that had kept the galaxy from tearing itself apart for 20 years. But now, everything was broken. The betrayal came without warning. At first, whispers ran through the corridors, rumors that one of the great empires had made a secret deal. The humans had sensed tension, but no one thought the betrayal would be so brutal. The evidence appeared before the council: transmissions, hidden contracts, fleets moving in the dark. An empire had chosen to break the Accord and side with ancient enemies. Humanity's colonies had been attacked in the night, cities bombed, children burned, and all the while the other races sat silent, watching. The envoy's hand curled into a fist. He had begged for answers, demanded justice, but the chamber gave him none. Instead, they accused humanity of provoking the war. They claimed Earth's defenses were too aggressive, its technology too dangerous. It was a lie. Everyone in the hall knew it. But power, greed, and fear had already shifted the balance. The envoy's voice cut through the silence, deep and steady. "You swore peace under this accord," he said, his eyes scanning the alien delegates. "And yet you struck at our homes while we slept. You call it balance. You call it order. I call it betrayal." 1,000 eyes turned away. No one dared to meet his gaze. He stood tall in the middle of the chamber, his voice echoing against the walls. "Earth will not forget this, and Earth will not forgive it." Behind him, Woe guards whispered nervously. They knew what was coming. The betrayal was not just politics, it was war. Outside the hall, orbiting above the neutral planet, human ships floated silent, their hulls dark, their weapons cold. No one knew what Earth carried in its fleets, for humanity had always been secretive. The galaxy believed humans were strong but limited, a new race still learning, still cautious. But deep inside Earth's shipyards, hidden projects had been built in silence, not for conquest, but for survival. And survival was the sharpest blade of all. The envoy's voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. "You think humanity weak. You think betrayal will break us. But you have awakened something you cannot control." The alien lords shifted in their seats, unease spreading across the hall. Some muttered warnings, others hissed in fear. A few sneered, confident that their fleets and numbers would crush the humans. The envoy simply turned, his long coat trailing as he walked to the great doors. The silence of his steps was louder than any threat. When the doors slammed shut, the chamber erupted into chaos. Some demanded unity, others demanded war. But none could erase the look in the human's eyes, cold, focused, and full of promise. On the surface of the planet, the envoy's shuttle rose into the night sky. Inside, he sat quietly, staring at the stars. His mind burned with memories of the destroyed colonies, the screams, the flames, the silence left after betrayal. He spoke only once to his pilot. "Send the message to Earth," he said. "The Accord is dead. Tell them. Prepare the answer." The pilot hesitated, his hands shaking on the controls. "Sir, what answer do you mean?" The envoy's eyes did not move from the stars. "The only answer they will understand: vengeance." The shuttle pierced the upper atmosphere, engines blazing as it vanished into the void, and in the darkness between the stars, Earth's hidden fleets stirred awake. For 20 years, humanity had played the role of diplomat, builder, and dreamer. But under the surface, under the treaties and handshakes, something else had been forged. Humanity had not forgotten its history, the wars, the losses, the constant struggle to survive on a dangerous world. Now, betrayed by those who promised peace, that ancient fire returned. The envoy sat back in silence, knowing the galaxy would soon learn the truth. Humanity was not a child race, not a pawn to be moved on a board. the envoy whispered to himself, the words a promise carried through the stars. They broke the accord. Now they will face humanity's judgment. The stars seemed to flicker, as if warning the galaxy of the storm to come. The silent fleet awakens. The stars outside the Envoy's shuttle burned cold and distant, but inside his heart burned hotter than any sun. The message had been sent. It carried across the void, not in words of peace, but in a call for retribution. On Earth, deep beneath the mountains, the message arrived at command. A long chamber filled with quiet officers, screens glowing in the dark. For years, they had prepared, always in silence, always under shadows. "Activate the reserves," one officer whispered. His voice trembled, for he knew what this meant. Humanity had kept secrets even from its allies, weapons hidden, fleets disguised as shadows in the void. The accord had forbidden warships larger than a city block. Humanity obeyed on the surface, showing smaller cruisers and defensive ships. But beneath the oceans, inside hollowed moons, in secret shipyards built around dead stars, something else had been born, the Silent Fleet. No one in the galaxy knew it existed, not even most humans. It was the answer to betrayal, built with steel, fire, and the memory of every war Earth had ever survived. Back on the Envoy's shuttle, he closed his eyes. He read the colonies burning, the children pulled from the ruins, the fathers screaming against the sky. He had walked among the ashes, promising survivors that justice would come. Now that promise was ready. When his shuttle docked with the command cruiser, the crew stood straight. Their eyes followed him with respect and fear. He was not just a diplomat anymore. He was the voice of vengeance. "Status of the fleet?" he asked. The captain, a broad man with scars across his face, answered quietly. "The Silent Fleet is awake, sir. 70 dreadnoughts online, black cores running, rail batteries charged, stealth nets engaged." The envoy nodded, but his expression stayed cold. 70 ships did not sound like much compared to the thousands fielded by the great empires, but these were not ordinary ships. Each one carried weapons forbidden by the Accord, weapons designed to end wars in minutes. In the distance, alien spies were already reporting. Their transmissions crackled through hidden relays. Human ships moving. Unknown class. Energy signatures unstable. The words carried fear. Across the galaxy, empires that betrayed the Accord received the reports. Some laughed, confident in their numbers. Others shifted nervously, remembering humanity's strange history, a race born on a death world, always fighting, always adapting. The envoy stood on the bridge, staring at the darkness of space. "Send word to the colonies," he said. "Tell them Earth has not forgotten. Tell them we carry their cries with us." But hope was not enough. The enemy fleets were gathering, great swarms of ships ready to strike again. They thought humanity would beg for mercy. They thought Earth would crawl on its knees. The envoy leaned over the tactical table, watching the star maps shift with enemy movement. His voice was calm but sharp as steel. "They broke the Accord," he said. "They believe we are weak. We will show them what weakness truly is." The captain glanced at him, hesitant. "Sir, if we strike, there is no turning back. The galaxy will fear us." The envoy's eyes narrowed. "Then let them fear. Fear is the only language they seem to understand." Outside, the Silent Fleet drifted in blackness, engines cold, their hulls swallowing light, like predators waiting for prey, and deep within each dreadnought, weapons hummed, railguns longer than skyscrapers, cannons that could split moons, shields woven with fields unknown to alien science. Humanity had hidden them for decades, waiting for this moment. On one dreadnought, a young pilot ran her hand across the console. She whispered to herself, "For my brother," remembering the night her colony burned. Another soldier loaded rail shells and whispered, "For my mother." 1,000 voices carried the same promise. The envoy stood silent, his hands resting on the table. He knew vengeance was near. He knew the galaxy would tremble. Far away, in the council chamber where the betrayal began, Alien leaders whispered. They thought humanity would protest, send petitions, try to heal. They never expected silence. They never expected the humans to vanish from the Accord's channels. One alien lord hissed in fear. "They are too quiet. Something is wrong." The others laughed. "They are broken. Their colonies burned. They cannot rise again." But outside their borders, hidden in the dark, the silent fleet shifted. Its engines lit like 1,000 sparks, one by one, awakening the storm. The envoy gave the final order, his voice steady. "Prepare the fleet. We answer betrayal with fire." And the galaxy, though it did not know it yet, had already stepped into a war it could not control. First strike. The stars shifted as the silent fleet moved from hiding. Black ships cutting through the void without sound. Each dreadnought glided like a shadow, cloaked, unseen by ordinary eyes. Their engines burned low, their weapons ready. The envoy stood at the center of the command bridge. He watched the tactical map see. Alive with enemy signals, the betraying empire had sent a massive fleet. Hundreds of cruisers and battleships, thousands of escorts. They believed numbers would crush humanity. "They do not know what waits for them," whispered the captain. The envoy's eyes did not leave the map. "They will learn," he said simply. The enemy fleet gathered near the edge of a human colony world, a planet still scarred by fire. The aliens thought they would finish what they started. They thought humanity would break once and for all. But in the shadows, the silent fleet had already arrived. Inside the human dreadnoughts, the crews prepared in silence. Fingers hovered above triggers, rail batteries charged, missile bays opened like jaws. Each soldier remembered the betrayal. Each one carried grief like a blade. The order came, not in a shout, but in a whisper from the envoy. "Fire!" The first railgun strike ripped through the darkness. A single round, a spear of light faster than thought. It tore across the void and shattered an enemy battleship in half. The explosion bloomed like a dying star. The alien fleet froze, confused. Sensors screamed, voices shouted, but no one knew what had struck them. Then the second shot came, followed by a third. A storm of invisible death rained from the silent fleet. Enemy ships burst apart, shredded before they could even respond. On the human bridge, silence held. The crew did not cheer. They only worked, calm, focused, delivering vengeance. Enemy commanders screamed orders. Their fleets scrambled into formations. But the humans were already moving. Their dreadnoughts shifted, cloaked and fast, striking from angles no one expected. One alien captain shouted, "They have weapons beyond the Accord. They are breaking the law." Another screamed back, "They were betrayed. This is no law. This is revenge." And the battlefield became fire, rail. Guns roared, missiles streaked like comets. Human fighters dove into enemy lines like wolves among sheep. Every shot was precise, every strike fueled by memory of betrayal. From orbit, the colony survivors watched. They saw human ships tear apart the fleet that had once burned their homes. Children pointed to the sky as wreckage fell like meteors. "We are not forgotten," they whispered. The envoy stood still, his face calm though his heart pounded like thunder. He knew this was only the beginning. This was not victory. It was the opening note of a long war. An officer turned toward him. "Sir, enemy numbers are still overwhelming. Even with our weapons, they outnumber us 10-1. The envoy's gaze was sharp as a blade. "Then we will make every shot count 10-fold. As if answering his words, another dreadnought fired its main cannon. A beam of condensed energy tore through a cluster of enemy cruisers, 20 ships gone in an instant. The galaxy had never seen such firepower. Fear spread faster than fire. Enemy ships began to break formation, commanders arguing. Some wanted to retreat, others demanded to fight. But the humans pressed harder. The envoy leaned forward, his voice low but fierce. "Do not let them escape. They must carry no message of weakness back to their masters. The galaxy will not hear of us in whispers. They will hear in screams." The silent fleet moved like predators, surrounding, tearing, consuming. Every alien ship destroyed was another warning written in fire across the stars. On the enemy flagship, the alien admiral watched the slaughter. His hands shook. This is impossible. Humans should not have this power. But power was not the secret. It was will. Humanity had survived worse than betrayal. Humanity had survived Earth itself, a death world where everything tried to kill them. Now that same fire burned in the void. At last, the envoy raised a hand. "Enough," he said. The fleet stopped, weapons cooling. The battlefield was silent except for the drifting wrecks of enemy ships. Survivors begged for mercy. Transmissions filled with fear, the envoy spoke into the channel, his voice steady. "You wanted us broken. Instead, you made us stronger. You thought betrayal would end humanity. Instead, you have written your own death." The words spread across open space, recorded, carried, whispered from world to world. And in that moment, the galaxy understood. Humanity had delivered its first strike, and vengeance had only begun. The galaxy trembles. The wreckage of the enemy fleet drifted in silence, metal twisted and burning as if the stars themselves had judged them. The silent fleet hovered among the ruins, black ships unmoved by victory. The envoy stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the void. Around him the crew waited for his next words, but he said nothing. He did not need to. The battlefield spoke for him. Across the galaxy, the shock spread. News traveled faster than light through hidden relays. Recordings of the slaughter played in council chambers, marketplaces, even in the halls of empires. Whole worlds whispered the same question. What has humanity become? Some called it impossible. Some said the recordings were lies. Others stared in silence, because they had seen the railgun strikes with their own eyes. On one council world, an alien leader slammed his clawed hand on the table. They swore to follow the accord. They were children compared to us. How could they build such weapons? Another, older voice answered quietly. Perhaps they were never children. Perhaps they were only waiting. And fear spread like fire. Allies who once called humanity a friend now sent spies, desperate to uncover the truth of the silent fleet. Enemies who betrayed the accord whispered to one another, already planning new strikes before humanity could rise too far, but none of them understood. Humanity was already awake, and once awake, it would not sleep again. Back on the human flagship, the captain approached the envoy. "Sir, the council worlds are calling for meetings. They want explanations. They want proof of peace." The envoy's eyes were hard as stone. "Peace died with the accord," he said, "and explanations are nothing but lies to cover betrayal." Still, he knew the galaxy was watching. He could not let them believe humanity had become a mindless destroyer. There had to be order in the fire, purpose in the vengeance. "Transmit a message," he commanded, "to all worlds, to all leaders. Tell them what we showed today was not war. It was judgment." The words were recorded, sent through every channel, and soon across the galaxy, billions heard the envoy's voice, steady and calm. "You betrayed the accord. You struck at our children. You burned our homes. Today we answered. Tomorrow we return for the rest." Those who heard it trembled. Some shouted for more war. Some begged for surrender. And some quietly prepared to run, for they knew Earth would find them no matter where they hid. The silent fleet moved again, engines glowing faintly. Each dreadnought slipped into the dark like a shadow, their presence a storm building on the horizon. On the bridge of the alien empire that led the betrayal, their emperor raged. His voice shook the walls. "Humans are nothing but upstarts. Crush them before their power spreads." But his generals were pale with fear. They had seen the recordings. They had watched entire fleets torn apart by a handful of human ships. "Your Majesty," one whispered, "if we strike again, we may not survive." The emperor's eyes burned with hate. "Then we die fighting, but I will not kneel to Earth." And so he gathered more fleets, tens of thousands of ships, desperate to show dominance. But the envoy was already planning. In his chamber, he stood alone before the star map. His hand hovered over the glowing marks of enemy strongholds, each one a wound carved into humanity. "We will not chase them," he whispered to himself. "We will strike where they believe themselves safe." and so he chose targets no one expected. Supply worlds, fuel depots, secret shipyards hidden in the dark, the kind of blows that could break an empire from the inside. The captain entered quietly. "Sir, the fleet awaits your order." The envoy turned, his face calm. "Then let us show them the cost of betrayal. Let us burn their hope before we burn their fleets." The silent fleet began its march, not toward the front lines, but into the heart of enemy territory. For the first time, the galaxy understood the truth. Humanity was not simply fighting a war. Humanity was delivering vengeance, calculated, merciless, and unstoppable. The stars themselves seemed to shiver as the silent fleet vanished into the void, carrying with it the promise of fire, vengeance complete. The silent fleet cut through the void like a blade, unseen until it chose to strike. The galaxy searched desperately, but no spy, no sensor, no hidden probe could follow its path. Humanity had become a shadow, and shadows moved where they wished. The envoy stood at the center of the flagship's bridge, his eyes cold, his face carved with resolve. He no longer looked like a diplomat. He was the voice of Earth's vengeance. The targets were chosen with care, not battlefronts, but lifeblood, fuel depots, supply chains, hidden factories. The empire that betrayed the Accord thought its strength was endless, but strength without supply was nothing but hollow pride. The first strike came without warning. A fuel world lit up like a dying sun, its surface cracked by rail shells that split mountains. Enemy fleets rushed to defend, but they arrived too late. The second strike followed days later, a hidden shipyard in the rings of a gas giant. The humans hit it with precision, detonating the docks, scattering half-built warships into fire. The workers fled in terror, whispering one word. Humans, the galaxy began to panic, not because of numbers, but because of silence. The silent fleet never announced itself, never explained, never bargained. It appeared, destroyed, and vanished, leaving only wreckage and whispers behind. On council worlds, leaders argued in fear. "They are too strong. We must beg for peace," one said. "No, if we surrender, they will destroy us anyway," another hissed. But none could deny the truth. Humanity was no longer a small race bound by accords. It was something new, something no one could control. Inside the enemy empire, fear spread faster than orders, generals argued. Fleets refused to launch. Citizens looked to the stars each night and wondered if today would be their end. The emperor screamed in rage, but rage could not rebuild what was lost. Finally, the envoy gave the order for the last strike, the heart of the empire, their capital world, the place from which betrayal had been commanded. The silent fleet arrived in the system like ghosts, dreadnoughts black and silent, their weapons glowing faintly. The alien defense armada waited, thousands of ships covering their world like a shield. The envoy stood silent, his hand resting on the console. Then he spoke, his voice calm. "They thought betrayal would be forgotten. Let them now see what memory truly means." The fleet fired. Railguns unleashed storms of light. Missiles streaked like falling stars. Human dreadnoughts cut through enemy lines as if they were paper. The defenders fought bravely, but bravery was nothing against vengeance forged in silence. One by one, enemy ships burned, their formations collapsed, their commanders begged for retreat, but the humans gave no quarter. At last, the envoy gave his final command, his voice steady. "Strike the capital. End this." A single dreadnought turned its cannon toward the world. The shot was not aimed at cities, but at the palace of the emperor himself. A beam of pure energy cut the skies, and in a flash, the seat of betrayal was gone. The empire's fleets broke apart. Commanders abandoned their posts. Soldiers surrendered without words. The war was over. Not because they were defeated in battle, but because their spirit had shattered. The envoy stood tall as silence fell across the bridge. His eyes closed for a moment, remembering the colonies that burned, the voices lost, the children who never saw tomorrow. And then he whispered, "Justice is done." Across the galaxy, the message spread. Humanity had delivered vengeance, not with chaos, but with cold, relentless purpose. No one could mistake it. No one could ignore it. Humanity had risen beyond fear, beyond weakness. From that day on, the galaxy no longer saw Earth as a young race. They saw it as a force, dangerous, patient, merciless when betrayed. The Envoy returned to Earth, carrying the silence of victory with him. In the great halls, survivors of the colonies stood to greet him. Their eyes shone with tears and pride. They whispered thanks, but he only shook his head. "This was not victory," he said softly. "This was a warning. Let the galaxy remember. Let them never again mistake peace for weakness." And the stars, cold and endless, carried the memory forward. The Accord was dead. The betrayal had been answered, and humanity's vengeance had changed the galaxy forever.